You arrived here not by accident, not by random curiosity. There's a quiet insistence in the universe that guided you to this moment. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you'll notice the threads converging, the subtle pulses of synchronicity whispering that you were meant to see this, to hear this, to feel this. You've been told that change is earned, that effort is proof, that struggle is the currency of growth. And yet something inside you has always known deep down, beneath the layers of striving and ritual, that the harder you push, the more the world pushes back. The future you chase always seems just out of reach, like a reflection flickering across ripples of water. You fight, you resist, you strive, and yet the life you long for slips further into the distance. Here lies the paradox. The very act of trying to fix yourself, to force transformation, to wrestle reality into your design, is the thing keeping change at bay. The universe, in all its quantum subtlety, does not respond to clenched fists, to tension, to the insistence that something is wrong. It responds to presence, to clarity, to the state from which you operate. What you are now, not what you hope to become, is the frequency that shapes what emerges. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake. Every ripple is a thought, every motion a resistance. And then you stop. You let the surface breathe. You allow the reflections to settle. In that quiet, in that pause, new patterns begin to appear, shapes not imposed, but invited. The same is true within you. The moment you stop needing to change, the field rearranges possibilities around you. Transformation doesn't arrive because you fight. It arrives because you stop opposing. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are simply misaligned with the version of yourself that already exists. And right now, here in this suspended space, you are being called to remember that truth. To release the need to fix, to allow the present to be enough, to tune rather than struggle, because the first quantum shift, the one that dissolves the entire cycle of striving, happens not when you try harder, but when you simply say, I am here, I am enough, I allow what is. In this moment, you may feel it, the quiet stir of presence, a subtle lift in the energy around your mind and body. This is the activation point. You don't need to chase it. You only need to notice. And in noticing, everything begins to shift. Notice how that stillness lingers as you take a breath, a bridge from the paradox you just felt. That pause is not empty, it's a signal. Every time you fight reality, every time you push against what already exists, you reinforce exactly what you resist. The quantum field does not misinterpret. It reflects with ruthless precision. When you struggle against life, your vibration becomes the echo of rejection, and the universe, in its perfect neutrality, mirrors that vibration back. You are locked in a loop, and the loop itself is subtle, so subtle that it masquerades as action, as productivity, as devotion, but beneath the surface, it is the same current running in circles, effort seeking what effort cannot produce. Imagine standing in a room with dozens of mirrors, each reflecting a version of yourself. Some look strained, desperate, grasping at possibilities. Others look serene, effortless, aligned. You move through these reflections, assuming the effortful self will somehow reach the calm version. But the mirrors do not lie. The reflections you reinforce with your energy, the ones etched with tension, with not enoughness, are the ones that dominate your experience. Each act of pushing, each insistence that things should be different, signals the field. This is wrong, this is lacking. And like a cosmic echo chamber, it returns more of what you broadcast, looping the same scenarios until you recognize the pattern. Here's the hidden architecture of that loop. It is not caused by external circumstances. The job, the relationship, the missed opportunity. These are not the architects of your frustration. They are mirrors, reflections of a deeper vibration. Your state of being, the unconscious frequency you emit, determines which realities collapse into form. When resistance drives your actions, your field does not reward your effort. It obeys the frequency. The harder you fight, the more resistance you project, the more it amplifies. And that is why so many seekers, despite meditation, affirmations, or visualizations, feel trapped in repetition. It is not the tools that fail, it is the state from which they are wielded. Consider now the subtle signals you broadcast when striving arises from a place of judgment. Each thought, each worry, each tightened muscle is a declaration, I am not yet enough. This moment is lacking. This reality is insufficient. The quantum field hears this with clarity, and it responds in kind. Resistance does not subtract, it multiplies. What you struggle against persists, because struggle itself is a signal, a vibration, a frequency encoded in your being. The universe, impartial and precise, simply mirrors it back. And yet, there is another signal you can emit, one that does not demand, does not tighten, does not resist. It is the quiet, steady resonance of allowance. It is the frequency that whispers, I am here, I am whole. I permit this moment to be as it is. From this state, the loop of resistance begins to unwind. You are no longer feeding the pattern of struggle. You are, instead, creating the conditions for the next phase of coherence, the subtle realignment that precedes transformation. This is the moment where awareness begins to outpace effort. You see the loop for what it is, and in seeing, you step off the treadmill of resistance. You do not abandon action, you recalibrate its source. Action emanates from alignment rather than deficit. And in this realignment, the field ceases to echo struggle and begins to respond to presence, to clarity, to coherence. From the loop of resistance, the gaze naturally shifts inward, toward the hidden engine beneath the struggle, your identity. You've been chasing change as if the act itself could create it. Yet the truth is subtler, quieter, and far more powerful. It is not the actions you take that shape reality. It is the state of being from which those actions arise. Your identity, your internal self-concept, is the gravitational center around which all experiences orbit. And if your identity is anchored in lack, in not yet enough, the field reads that, and reality conforms. Think of identity as a deep river carved over time, a current that has formed the very bedrock of your emotional and energetic landscape. Years, decades even, of believing you must improve, must fix, must earn, have etched patterns so ingrained that your body, your mind, and your nervous system recognize this as home. Neuroscience confirms it. The body memorizes not just thoughts, but biochemical states. Fear, unworthiness, impatience, longing, all these states become your baseline. Your mind may conjure visions of abundance, your heart may reach for freedom, yet your identity, the unseen conductor, pulls you back toward familiar rhythms. And here lies the trap. Trying harder does not shift your identity. In fact, it often reinforces it. The more you identify as someone who needs to change, the more you send the subtle signal, I am still not enough. Every meditation, every affirmation, every self-help ritual performed from this identity while seemingly productive is absorbed by the field as confirmation of that vibration. The universe is precise. It reflects the self-perception, not the goal. You are not failing because you lack skill. You are succeeding in being exactly who you have been broadcasting yourself to be. Now imagine stepping out of that current, not forcing yourself to be different, not scripting a future self, but simply observing the identity that drives your striving. See it for what it is, a construct, a set of habitual vibrations. Notice the subtle tensions, the constant need to prove, to fix, to optimize, and recognize that these are not flaws, but indicators of where your broadcast is still misaligned. The version of you who must change to be worthy is not a problem to solve. It is a signal to redirect your awareness. This redirection does not come from effort. It comes from noticing the frequency you are emitting and choosing to calibrate it. It comes from saying, I no longer need to prove my worthiness to the field. I allow myself to be whole now. In that simple shift, you begin to untangle decades of unconscious programming. You step into a field that responds to alignment, not struggle. The timelines begin to reorganize, not because you are working harder, but because your energetic signature has changed. And here is the subtlety few grasp: identity is magnetic. It does not merely shape your perception, it attracts congruent experiences. Until you realign the self-concept, everything else, relationships, finances, health, opportunities, remains a reflection of who you believe yourself to be. The trap is invisible, yet its pull is relentless. It whispers, do more, fix more, become more, and yet the key is not more. The key is coherence. The key is allowing the identity that is already whole to lead, so the field can respond naturally, effortlessly, precisely. From understanding identity, your attention turns to the subtle force masquerading as progress, the urge to fix. You've been conditioned to believe that reality must be wrestled into compliance. That imperfection is an invitation to effort. That struggle proves worth. And yet, this very energy, the tightening, the this must change insistence is what locks you into the reality you wish to escape. Fixing is a signal of rejection, a vibration that declares, silently but insistently, this is wrong. This is insufficient. The field hears it with perfect clarity and reflects back the very scenarios you are trying to remove. Consider how a river behaves when you try to redirect it with walls and barriers. The water does not vanish, it presses harder, finding resistance in every corner, creating turbulence, spinning in loops. Your effort to fix operates the same way. The more you struggle against the present, the more the universe mirrors tension, returning patterns that reinforce the sense of inadequacy. The irony is cruel, yet precise in trying to escape what is. You become entangled with it even more tightly. Fixing is seductive. It promises control. It promises tangible results. You can measure progress, tally tasks, complete rituals, and yet the underlying vibration, the internal state that underpins all creation, remains unchanged. The field does not respond to action alone. It responds to coherence, and coherence cannot be forced. It arises when the friction of judgment and striving dissolves. When you stop seeing yourself as a problem to solve, the energy of fixing loses traction. Now, imagine standing before a locked door and discovering the key is not force, not picking, not pounding, but simply releasing tension, relaxing your grip, and allowing the door to respond to presence. That is the essence of tuning versus fixing. Tuning is not effort. Tuning is resonance. It is choosing to inhabit a state of wholeness and letting that state shape reality. Your actions flow naturally from this resonance, rather than being compelled by fear, lack, or urgency. The paradox is counterintuitive because everything you have learned about productivity and self-improvement points in the opposite direction. Schools, mentors, media, they glorify the struggle, the checklist, the constant push. Yet in the quantum reality, every act of force is a broadcast of not enough. Even well-intentioned effort, when rooted in deficiency, compounds the tension it seeks to relieve. Your attempts to fix are not neutral. They are precise vibrational signals. The path out of this trap is deceptively simple: shift the source. not the behavior. Stop attempting to engineer outcomes from a state of resistance. Instead, cultivate presence, allow what is, and align with the version of yourself that is already whole. In that state, action arises effortlessly, decisions flow clearly, and the field begins to reorganize possibilities around you. Fixing collapses timelines into repetition. Allowing collapses them into expansion. You are being invited to stop working on the self you think needs changing, and instead begin resonating as the self that is already aligned. From this subtle recalibration, everything begins to move differently. The field responds not to your intensity, but to your coherence. The very act of letting go, the relinquishment of the need to fix, is the first true quantum shift. From releasing the illusion of fixing, your awareness naturally moves into the terrain of allowance, the hidden law that governs effortless transformation. This is a principle both mystical and scientific, a rhythm woven into the very fabric of reality. When you stop resisting, when you no longer insist that what is must be other than it is, the universe responds, not through pressure, not through force, but through magnetic alignment. The law of allowing is the quiet conductor behind every shift that ever felt effortless, every synchronicity that appeared as grace. Imagine standing in a vast field of tall grass. A breeze flows through without demanding direction, without judging which stalk should sway first. The entire field moves in harmony with the wind's subtle guidance. That is the field responding to presence rather than push, responding to the frequency you emit rather than the intensity of your demands. Effort rooted in urgency scrambles the signal. Presence rooted in allowance transmits with clarity. The difference is palpable, even in the subtle layers of your own nervous system. Tension contracts, coherence expands, urgency distorts, clarity attracts. Allowing does not mean surrendering ambition, nor abandoning discernment. It means releasing the attachment to outcome as proof of worth. It means choosing to radiate wholeness now, even if circumstances seem incomplete. In this state, action is guided, not forced. Effort arises naturally, not compulsively. You become the point of coherence through which the next frame of reality forms. The field does not reward striving, it mirrors alignment. The moment you embody the state of already being, the timelines you seek begin to converge effortlessly, as if reality itself is anticipating your presence. Consider the subtle signal you broadcast when you allow. There is no "I must fix this," no vibration of inadequacy. Instead, there is a calm pulse. I am here. I am whole. I am coherent. That pulse organizes possibilities around it. The law of allowing operates like gravity, invisible, yet undeniable, drawing the right circumstances, the right people, the right opportunities into orbit. It is counterintuitive because all your training, your conditioning, has taught you that power lies in effort, in struggle. But in the quantum field, clarity is power, coherence is power, presence is power. This law is precise. It does not bend to your wishes. It responds to your state. Effort rooted in fear, in not enough, simply amplifies the conditions you hope to escape. Allowance, by contrast, opens the channels for transformation without imposing strain. You begin to realize that the old paradigm of "I must do more to become more" was never about actual progress. It was a loop, feeding resistance, echoing limitation. The new paradigm, the law of allowing, is about becoming the signal the field can recognize, the frequency that invites evolution without coercion. Here, the paradox of quantum creation becomes vivid. You do not create by pushing harder. You create by tuning, by allowing, by embodying the state you wish to experience. The field responds to coherence, not effort. The universe is precise, impartial, and exquisitely sensitive to your inner vibration. Allowing is not passive, it is the highest form of energetic intelligence. In this intelligence, you discover that transformation is not a battle, it is a resonance. From allowance, your consciousness naturally slides into surrender, the subtle art that transforms presence into magnetic power. Surrender is not giving up. It is not passivity, nor resignation. In the quantum field, surrender is non-interference. It is the precise calibration of your internal state so that the energy around you can reorganize unimpeded. This is where science and spirit converge. Observation does not merely watch, it participates. Your very being collapses waves of possibility into form. And the quality of your observation, the steadiness, the clarity, the absence of resistance determines what manifests. Imagine holding a delicate crystal. The harder you squeeze, the more likely it is to fracture. Release your grip. Hold it lightly, with awareness, and it aligns naturally with the light, reflecting brilliance without force. Surrender is that light touch, applied to your life and your own identity. The old habits of trying, fixing, pushing, and controlling are like a clenched mat. They fracture timelines, scatter energy, and amplify resistance. When you surrender, you become the observer who allows patterns to emerge organically, who participates without dictating, who resonates rather than constrains. Surrender also reframes the notion of struggle. Many believe that effort must precede transformation, that resistance is a necessary precursor to growth. Quantum physics teaches otherwise. The observer effect shows us that consciousness itself influences outcomes. When your observation is colored by tension, fear, or lack, the field produces results aligned with those signals. When your observation rests in presence, in neutrality, in allowance, new possibilities emerge effortlessly. This is why surrender is not weakness, it is energetic intelligence of the highest order. Consider the subtle internal signals that surrender broadcasts: calm breathing, softening muscles, openness in your thoughts, and acceptance in your heart. Each of these is a frequency the field reads. They carry no judgment, no insistence, no urgency, and the field responds, reorganizing circumstances in accordance with your internal coherence. Timelines that once seemed distant or blocked suddenly converge. Opportunities, insights, and connections appear without effort. The same patterns that required struggle now align naturally, guided by the subtle precision of your presence. Surrender also dissolves the paradox of control. You do not need to micromanage outcomes, prove worth, or earn timelines. These compounding efforts, while well-intentioned, are exactly what reinforce the very loops you wish to escape. Instead, surrender shifts the source. Your state becomes the anchor. You no longer demand reality conform to your plan. You become the resonance that reality can recognize. The field, in perfect neutrality, responds by collapsing timelines into forms that match your coherent vibration. In this physics of surrender, you discover a principle often overlooked. You do not transform life by wrestling it into alignment. You transform life by aligning yourself, internally and vibrationally, allowing the external world to reflect that coherence. The old version of you, the one who struggles, fixes and pushes, is not the obstacle. It is a signal waiting to be recalibrated. Through surrender, the signal is refined, and the universe begins to respond, not to your effort, but to your state. From surrender, your awareness naturally settles into the still point, the interior space where effort dissolves and coherence emerges. This is not a dramatic awakening or an external event. It is a subtle vibrational shift. Imagine a pendulum that has swung tirelessly, its energy dissipating into resistance. Then it pauses. That pause is the still point. Within it, tension relaxes, clarity arises, and the internal landscape becomes a fertile ground for new possibilities. Here, you are no longer battling reality. You are receiving it, aligning with it, allowing it to reflect the version of yourself that is already whole. The still point is magnetic. It draws experiences, insights, and opportunities without compulsion. Your nervous system begins to recalibrate, remembering what it feels like to inhabit wholeness, presence, and allowance. This is where identity and frequency intersect. The old self, the struggler, the fixer, the not yet enough begins to release its grip not through force, but through recognition. You notice that the struggle itself is optional, a pattern you have been participating in unconsciously. Awareness alone begins to shift the vibration. Consider the field as a vast ocean and your frequency as the tide. When waves crash and churn, the ocean resists your shape, reflecting turbulence. But when the tide becomes calm, coherent, and consistent, the ocean mirrors it effortlessly. That is the power of the still point. Your inner state creates the conditions for coherence to emerge externally. You are no longer negotiating with life, no longer attempting to push or pull outcomes into form. You are becoming the resonance that attracts. And in that resonance, the quantum field begins to arrange reality in alignment with your essence. The still point is also a place of profound insight. Here you recognize that all previous effort, every ritual, meditation, visualization, or attempt to control was merely a broadcast of tension, urgency, or lack. None of these were wrong. They were tools being used from a misaligned identity. The shift is not in doing more, but in being more, being coherent, being aligned, being present. The universe responds to this coherence with perfect neutrality, reorganizing patterns, collapsing timelines, and creating possibilities that effort alone could never achieve. Notice, too, that this stillness carries intelligence. It is not inert. It is active in a subtle quantum way. Each thought, each breath, each recognition of allowance is a signal to the field. Your presence becomes a template. The old loops of struggle begin to unwind. Opportunities and synchronicities emerge not as miracles, but as natural extensions of your coherent vibration. You are no longer outside the flow. You are the flow. The still point is where identity dissolves into resonance, where striving gives way to being, and where transformation becomes inevitable not through effort, but through alignment. From the still point, your consciousness drifts into the void, not a void of emptiness, but a space of pure potential, unshaped and waiting. Here, identity dissolves, expectation disappears, and what remains is the essential self, the observer that does not resist, does not push, does not fix. This is the quantum void, the space where timelines exist as probabilities, ready to be collapsed into reality by the coherence of your presence. In this void, the old self, the struggler, the fixer, the not yet ceases to dominate. You are no longer attempting to impose change. You are allowing emergence. Imagine a dark sky filled with stars. Each star is a possibility, a timeline, a version of reality. The light exists, but only when observed does it crystallize into form. In the quantum void, you are the observer whose state determines which star collapses into the next moment. Tension, urgency, or resistance will collapse stars into familiar patterns. The same old loops, presence, clarity, and alignment collapse stars into trajectories that serve your coherent self. Here, the void is not threatening, it is fertile. It is the womb of creation. The void also reveals the subtlety of your participation. Every attempt to force, to fix, to control is an interference. It sends a signal of lack. I am not enough. reality is not enough. The field responds with reflection, reinforcing what you resist. But when you release these interference patterns, when you dwell in the quiet void of allowance, the universe responds differently. Possibilities that seemed impossible begin to organize naturally. Timelines realign, opportunities converge, actions flow effortlessly, as if life itself anticipates your presence. In this space beyond effort, you begin to understand the mechanics of transformation. It is not the work you do, nor the rituals you perform that catalyze change. It is the vibrational state you inhabit. The field does not judge your intentions. It reads your frequency. The void is the laboratory where this truth becomes tangible. When you stop trying to become, when you stop holding yourself at arm's length from wholeness, you collapse realities that match the essence of who you already are. This is the subtle intelligence most seekers miss. Effort is often mistaken for agency, but the true agent of change is the self beyond effort. It is the version of you that observes without judgment, that allows without clinging, that participates without interfering. Here, the old loops, the old struggles, the old identities dissolve naturally, not through force but through presence. The void teaches that absence of control is not absence of power. It is the precise mechanism by which coherence manifests as reality. From the quantum void, your awareness settles into embodiment, the act of becoming the frequency itself. No longer is transformation a distant goal, a checklist of fixes or achievements. You are not trying to manufacture reality. You are now radiating the vibration of the self that is already whole. Every thought, breath, and subtle emotion becomes a signal, a coherent transmission to the field, collapsing probabilities in alignment with the version of you that no longer needs to struggle to exist. Imagine a tuning fork. When struck, it vibrates, sending waves through the air. Any nearby forks, if compatible, resonate in harmony without additional effort. You are that tuning fork. Your internal frequency determines the resonance of your environment, the people you meet, the ideas that arise, the opportunities that emerge, all respond not to your intentions, but to the signature of your being. When your state is coherent, aligned, and present, the field does not merely accommodate you, it participates with you, arranging circumstances to reflect your vibrational truth. Becoming the frequency is subtle yet radical. It requires relinquishing the identity of the fixer, the struggler, the one constantly seeking validation from results. Those patterns, while familiar, are no longer necessary. Instead, you inhabit the internal reality of wholeness, clarity, and allowance. Your body remembers it. Your nervous system recalibrates to it. Your presence broadcasts it. This is not fantasy. It is a practical application of quantum principles in everyday life. Your observation, your participation, your state of being, not your effort, is what determines the collapse of possibilities into your lived experience. Notice the shift in energy when you begin to operate from this frequency. The tension that once guided every action softens. Decisions feel lighter, more intuitive. Relationships flow with ease rather than friction. Challenges do not vanish, but your response aligns with coherence rather than resistance. The field responds with precision, timelines converge, synchronicities appear, and what once required struggle now unfolds effortlessly. You become a conduit, a vibrational template through which reality organizes itself naturally. The paradox deepens here. Those who achieve lasting transformation are rarely the ones who push hardest. They are the ones who cultivate presence, align their identity with wholeness, and radiate that state consistently. You do not need to fix. You do not need to chase. You simply need to inhabit the version of yourself who already embodies the change. Effort becomes unnecessary because the frequency itself commands the environment. Being the frequency is not passive. It is precise, deliberate, and infinitely potent. From becoming the frequency, the final bridge opens to living without trying. This is not a promise of ease, nor a license for passivity. It is a profound shift in orientation from external striving to internal coherence. You are no longer operating under the assumption that life must bend to your will, that you must wrest reality into alignment. Instead, you inhabit the state of the self that already radiates wholeness, and life begins to respond naturally. The difference is subtle, yet unmistakable. The tension that once accompanied every action dissolves, replaced by a flow that feels like instinct, like returning home. Notice how this looks in practice. You wake up, not with anxiety over what must be achieved, but with awareness of who you are, of the resonance you carry. Decisions arise from clarity rather than compulsion. Challenges are met from presence rather than panic. You interact with people, ideas, and opportunities without the silent pressure of "this must happen." And in response, the field organizes effortlessly. Timelines converge, coincidences appear, doors open without forcing, and the momentum of life seems to synchronize with your inner rhythm. You are no longer broadcasting lack, you are broadcasting coherence, and the field obeys the signal you are emitting. Living without trying is a mastery of subtlety. It requires observing the impulse to fix, to control, to rush, and consciously choosing not to act from it. The old habits, the loops of effort, the constant need to prove, the identity of striving do not vanish instantly, but they weaken as you consistently inhabit a different signal. The very act of being present, of allowing, of radiating the vibration of already being, recalibrates the field. You become a magnet, not by grasping, not by strategizing, but simply by embodying the frequency that aligns with what you desire. Here is the paradox that underlies all quantum shifts. The more you chase, the more entangled you remain with the conditions you wish to escape. The more you allow, the more the field organizes itself to reflect coherence. Effort, urgency, and struggle carry the vibration of lack, and the universe, precise in its neutrality, mirrors it. Presence, allowance, and wholeness carry the vibration of completeness, and reality begins to reorganize itself accordingly. Your experience is no longer an outcome of repeated attempts, but a reflection of your internal alignment. In living without trying, you notice a quiet magnetism emerging. Opportunities that once felt distant or blocked appear with ease. Relationships shift naturally. Resources flow toward you without strain. You no longer need external proof to feel aligned, because the alignment originates within. This is the culmination of the work, not in accumulation, not in achievement, not in fixing, but in coherence. You move through the world as a signal of wholeness, and the universe responds in kind. And yet, this is not the end. Living without trying is a continuous practice, a rhythm of awareness, presence, and alignment. Each day presents new opportunities to calibrate your signal, to notice the subtle pull of old identities, and to choose coherence over tension. The field does not demand perfection, it only responds to your vibration. As you cultivate this state, the loops of striving fade. You are no longer the one attempting to become, you are simply being. Here, finally, you see the truth that has been waiting beneath all effort. The version of yourself you have been chasing already exists within. You were never broken. You were never incomplete. The struggle, the striving, the push, all of it was a veil. And now, by living without trying, that veil dissolves. You inhabit a frequency of wholeness, clarity, and alignment, and in doing so, You allow life itself to reorganize around you. This is the ultimate paradox of quantum shifts. Transformation is not achieved by doing more, but by being more, by radiating what already is, and by trusting that the field is listening. As you emerge from living without trying, allow the energy of all you've explored to settle into your nervous system. The stillness, the coherence, the resonance, they are not concepts to chase, but states to inhabit. Recall the quiet magnetism of the self that does not push, does not force, does not strive. That version of you has always been present, beneath the loops of effort, beneath the tension of trying, beneath the identity of not enough. Now you are beginning to recognize it. Take a moment to breathe and feel the difference. Notice the subtle ease in your chest, the softening in your shoulders, the lift in your awareness. Each inhalation affirms, I am enough. I am whole. I am present. Each exhalation releases the last traces of striving, judgment, and urgency. The field is listening. Your nervous system remembers the vibration of coherence. Even for a brief moment, you step outside the loop of effort and enter the sacred gap where transformation flows naturally, effortlessly, inevitably. This wind down is an invitation to integrate. You do not need another technique, another ritual, another practice to unlock what has always been available. The field responds not to doing, but to being. Your alignment, your clarity, your presence are the calibration points for reality itself. You are not learning a trick. You are remembering a frequency. Each action, each thought, each interaction can now carry this resonance. The world begins to reflect the version of you who has stopped chasing, who has stopped fixing, who has simply arrived. And as you sit in this presence, notice the subtle shifts already occurring. Opportunities that once felt distant may feel closer. Relationships may feel lighter, more synchronized. Ideas, inspirations, and synchronicities may begin to arise without effort. This is the field responding to your new broadcast. Your coherence has become a signal, your alignment a magnet. The life you long for is not somewhere else. It has always been emerging in response to the vibration you emit. In closing, let this be your soft reminder: transformation is not in accumulation, struggle, or proof of worth. Transformation is in returning to the stillness, returning to the self that has always been whole, returning to presence. As you move through your day, carry this frequency with you. Notice when old loops whisper, and consciously choose coherence. Breathe into presence. Radiate alignment. Trust that the field is responding, not to the doing, but to the being that you now embody. In this space, you are free. Free from trying, free from fixing, free from waiting for a future to justify your worth. You are already here. You are already enough. And the universe, in perfect resonance, meets you exactly where you are.